Hello, welcome to PODnas. This is a sports show with a little Southern Cajun flair. I'm Daniel Hawks, Jared Roser. Today we're going to be talking about that first round of the draft. It just happened. We're in the midst of it. Round 2 and 3 start later tonight. We'll go over what the Saints did, where Will Campbell went last night, and Shedeur Sanders dropping. Jarrett, how the heck are you doing on this Friday?
Good, man. Good Thursday night watching that first round unfold. Obviously, a lot to unpack there, and really looking forward to now.
There was
days
so
two,
many sports
two.
on last night. It was just
I
everywhere.
I had a guy that's been on the channel a few times, Brett McCormick, who covers some Central Louisiana stuff and North Louisiana stuff for me during high school season, was messing with me, kind of like poking a little bit on Twitter. And I said, man, on the night that I'm missing playoff inside the NBA to cover the draft, you're going to try and like give me a harder time, because I was fully football locked in. And I guess I'm glad that most of the basketball games ended up looking a little bit more lopsided, I guess. So, well, actually, that's it looked lopsided, and then the Thunder came back and embarrassed the hell out of the Grizzlies. But neither here nor there. I was pretty locked into football. Was happy to see, obviously, Will go off the board, and now looking forward to the next 2 nights of Louisiana guys going rounds 2 through 7.
And Will Campbell's little interview after was emotional, I would say, to say the least. I kind of got a little fired up. If I was Drake May, I'd be really ecstatic that this dude is coming to my offensive line. When they said, "I'll fight and I'm going to fight and die for you."
That's Will. I mean, you can't ask for a guy in your locker room, if you're a football player, that is going to be better in terms of the character and passion and all those things that Will brings to the table. And that's obviously something that leading up to the draft was what was catching Mike Vrabel and company's eye as much as anything. Obviously, physically, I mean, he went there and won a starting job as a true freshman in the SEC, held it down for 3 years, super decorated, consensus All-America and all these things, tested incredibly well at the combine in terms of the athletic traits aspect. But what he brings in terms of everything else even exceeds that. And so was awesome to see for Will. I'm looking forward to asking his parents, Brian and Holly, how often they've seen him get emotional like that, because I imagine it's probably a count on one hand's type of a conversation. But he's someone that I think the Patriots loved throughout this. The only question was they kind of wish they could have maybe moved back a couple spots and still gotten him. But clearly with the run on tackles there, with Membu and Banks both going in the top 10, there wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room for them if they still wanted to get Campbell as their guy. And ultimately they got their guy. And then those interviews just have to make New England fans that much more ecstatic that he is in fact their guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about a little bit what you said there, that run on tackles. Saints were in that run. They drafted Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas, offensive tackle at number 9. They are the 6th pick, or I believe the 7th pick in the second round today. They also are, I believe, the 5th or 6th, or in that 5, 6, 7 range in the 3rd round as well.
40 and 71. I don't know which number in the rounds, but yeah.
I'm not good at this. Why would you ask me? But what did you think about the Kelvin Banks pick for the Saints? What do you think the Saints are going to do today? And do you think that there is a possibility that they maybe move up to grab a quarterback in this early second round? With Cleveland having 2 of those early picks, the Saints are kind of sandwiched right in the middle of there. Cleveland obviously needs a quarterback as well. The Saints are desperate for a quarterback with the Derek Carr news. We don't know what's going on there, how long he's going to be out. So what do you think happens today for the Saints?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the Banks piece of it. I thought fine pick ultimately. We talked in our mock draft, and I was leaning more toward those defensive standouts, the UGA teammates, who I think have a chance to both be really, really good NFL players. And so just from a personal preference standpoint, I would say Banks wasn't necessarily one of the top, 2 or 3, 2 to 4 maybe guys that I wanted in that 9 spot as it fell to the Saints. But I don't think he was really far down that list. And with reports at different points that they might reach for Shedeur, who we'll get to later, obviously ends up being, he hopes, a 2nd round pick at this point. Reports at one point that the Saints really liked Josh Connerly, the Oregon tackle, who I thought is like the 5th or 6th best tackle in the class. For them to end up with a guy in Kelvin Banks to address that offensive line, who was one of the top graded tackles in the country this year, according to PFF. He's a former blue chip prospect out of Texas that LSU recruited the hell out of before he stayed close to home and signed with the Longhorns. And he's someone that was considered through a lot of this process right there, kind of him and Will as the top tackle prospects. And so I think you get a really good guy at 9 that is probably one of the top, 10 to 12, 10 to 15 prospects in this class. And I know fans I see on social media saying, oh, a tackle, we keep drafting offensive linemen. Like, they want something sexy. They don't know Kelvin Banks because he's a big guy in the trenches, but boring picks win championships. You have to address the trenches, and I think Kelvin Banks is a nice addition to that trench group. And for them kind of transitioning into day 2, there were only 5 or 6 offensive tackles, maybe push that to 7, that people seem to view as difference maker, high round guys at that offensive tackle position. And those guys that I like, the UGA guys, linebackers and edge rushers, there's a little bit more of a wealth of those guys available on day 2. And so I think the Saints maybe look at some of the depth of the draft in different position groups and thought this is a more valuable kind of combo pick scenario where let's go get that O lineman today, and then we've got options on Friday.
Do you think that this was a move to maybe move Talise Fuega, or I apologize if I mispronounce his name, back over to the right side of the line? Drafting, I think, where he played all of college, maybe a little bit more comfortable. You can bring Kelvin Banks in to take over that left side, where he played in college. So it can go a little bit back to a better, or at least a more familiar, because I do think that I think Fuega is very good. I do think he struggled a little bit in that left tackle position last year.
Yeah, I think both of these guys bring some levels of flexibility. And obviously, I mean, they're both young guys, and showing that flexibility, that positional versatility at an NFL level is going to be a little bit of a work in progress. But I think they now have, I don't know that I'd go so far as to say chess pieces on the offensive line, but they've got some guys they can do some different things with depending on how the rest of it comes together. I mean, not only this year, but for years to come. I'd as much as people want to complain about an offensive lineman, hell, go get another one on day 2 next year. So maybe not keep going first round every single year, but high round draft picks for some offensive linemen can pay dividends long-term when you're still really very much building the foundation for the future here.
Yeah. And so real quick, let's go over some of those players that are still available for this round 2. We do have obviously Shedeur Sanders, Mason Taylor from LSU, tight end is there. And then there are a bevy of defensive players. Will Johnson, cornerback over from Michigan, who is the 2nd overall prospect on Mel Kiper's big board at ESPN. Also got 2 edge guys, Mike Green over at Marshall and Donovan Izuraku over from Boston College. May have gotten that wrong. Darius Alexander on the defensive line as well. And then Nick Imanawari over at South Carolina, the safety. So, and obviously, I don't think they're going to go running back, but you got Travion Henderson still up there. You got Arroyo, tight end over at Miami. And then in a wild turn of events, Mel Kiper, or not Mel Kiper, Todd McShay had a mini mock draft in his report that came out this morning for the 2nd round. And he has the Saints taking Tyler Shuck from Louisville, quarterback, in the 2nd round. Still does not have Shedeur Sanders picked in that top 10. What do we think happens in these next these next 2 picks for the Saints? Do you think there's a possibility that they try to move up to the beginning of the 2nd round, or do you think they stand pat? And what kind of positions do you think that they should be looking at in these next 2 rounds?
I think with some of the options there, if I'm the Saints, I stand pat and feel like I've got a good option falling to me at 40. Now, we've seen historically Mickey Loomis loves to go give away draft capital and move up a few spots here and there. So I'm not putting it past him at all to start the day on Friday. But I'm interested to see, do the Saints go take Shuck? I don't think Sanders is coming to New Orleans unless that slide just gets insane and maybe gets down to a 71 or something like that. I don't think they're about to take him to start the day. I would think more likely if they take a quarterback at 40, it would be Shuck. But I also look at options in that secondary and of the edge rushers and think that one of those positions, if not both, is probably getting addressed Friday as they continue to kind of build out that sort of way. Kind of, obviously addressing the offensive line, but we've heard so many reports about them wanting to find kind of the heir apparent to Cam Jordan, bless you, that we talked about in the mock draft to kind of come be the intern on the fly here in year one as a rookie potentially, and then be able to kind of be the next guy moving forward in their second year.
Moving along, last piece in this first NFL draft, Shedeur Sanders falls completely out of the first round. He's still on the board. I think one of the biggest things that I've just been reading since then is everyone is it's not even a question of like when, it's how far will he fall. I personally think with Cleveland having those 2 picks up top that he's not going past there. But I've been wrong about a lot of different things on this show. So I wouldn't take any stock in what I'm saying.
And off the show too,
No, off the show I'm right all of the time. I'm literally never wrong off the show. It's just when we get in here, I get nervous under the big bright lights, the YouTube lights. What do you think of this Shedeur fall?
I think that to this point, I'm largely unsurprised that I went into Thursday thinking he's probably not going until 21, and then maybe the Steelers take him at 21. But even then, I didn't anticipate that happening. And so it just became what was going to happen with the late first round trade-ins, who was moving up and for whom, Jackson Dart and Shedeur Sanders, obviously. And so the Giants make that move and go get Dart. I think the craziest part to me about all of this was more just the aggression of the reaction. And I guess that's television, but Mel Kiper at points started to sound like, is he on the Sanders payroll? Because he was so up in arms about this happening. And you're watching, I saw Saints fans on social media that I know who burned their jersey over a really nice pick because they just had locked in on this idea of Shedeur. And I think you saw the celebrity angle of Shedeur and this idea of following this hype train of wanting this player to be a part of it kind of outweigh where it seemed evident throughout the pre-draft process of the actual value that NFL teams had for this guy. And that's why I was so frustrated when we first talked about the reports of could the Saints go take Shedeur at 9. Not only does it seem like the Saints on their board looked at Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck as well, potentially over Shedeur Sanders, but it just felt like a reach for a guy that was going to be a end of the first round or day 2 type guy. And different teams have different boards, and at quarterback in particular, different coaches and different systems want different styles of quarterbacks. And Shedeur, I think, is has the potential to be a good NFL quarterback and make a team and a fan base really happy. But you look at this league right now, and there's, 6 or 7 teams that really probably look at the quarterback spot and think, I need that guy. I need a quarterback here quickly. And half of those teams maybe value Dart or Shuck more than Shedeur. And so the numbers of potential landing spots continue to dwindle for a guy that was a really good college player, not crazy arm strength, not crazy athleticism, but a good player that led essentially a 500 team the past couple of years and comes into your building with everything else going on. There were reports during the combine of interviews not being that great. Dion, his father, obviously throughout the process talked about like wanting to find the right spot and pick the spots. There were only so many spots there to begin with that were going to take that shot on him. And then when you continue to limit and get into that numbers game, all of a sudden you're looking at, okay, which of 2 or 3 teams is taking you at a certain point, or Do you have to slide so far that a team with its quarterback spot already filled out finally says, all right, this has gone far enough. We can't pass that value in our number 2. And so I think that's where they're at right now. Cleveland is one of those spots that makes a lot of sense. So I agree with you to watch those 2 picks early Friday, but I was not surprised Thursday by anything other than the aggressiveness of the reaction.
Yeah. And the Saints are picking eighth in the second round. Browns have the first and fourth pick. Raiders also have that fifth pick. If we're just looking at teams that possibly would maybe take a quarterback.
Yeah, that's another one that was interesting to me as well. The Raiders. I pointed out.
You could say Jets, maybe. Let me just go through a couple more. Could say Jets, maybe. Could say Colts. Both of those have running quarterbacks who we aren't sure if they can throw the ball.
Yeah. That's the 4 that I highlighted at the end of the night last night was watch Cleveland and Vegas up high as kind of the top tier. This might happen here. And then the Jets and Colts were kind of the next 2 most interesting to me.
Yeah. Jets, Colts. You could maybe say Miami, LA, or Arizona. They all have quarterbacks in place, but they all, I don't think are, Stafford's not going to be in the league much longer. Tua, there's always a little bit of just weird, I think, weird vibes with Tua in that Miami.
Will he survive this Sunday?
And same thing with Kyler in Arizona. Is he their long-term answer? Those questions and ideas have been floated, at least in the media, all off season. And then the Seahawks as well. They have a couple picks in the second round. I'm just not, I think I'm just burned by the Falcons last year. So I just don't care if you gave anyone a bunch of money. So
yeah. So part of the equation that we talk about with these quarterbacks this year is it was not, we talked repeatedly, it wasn't a great quarterback draft. And so when you compare it to last year, which was, okay, where does Cam Ward slot in comparatively to a year ago? Where does Shedeur and Jackson Dart slot in comparatively to a year ago? The other piece of that equation of not just valuing how good of a prospect these guys are by using that litmus test is all of those teams that took quarterbacks last year aren't taking quarterbacks this year. So you filled those slots around the league and get into that numbers game that I was mentioning. And then some teams, when they see, okay, Nussmeier's coming out, will Arch come out, some of the options ahead, think, well, let's not go all in on a guy this year when we have someone that we already feel is a competent bridge guy for the next 1 to 3 years when we know that there are better options coming in 26 and 27.
That is why I would love the Saints in the second too, especially with Will Johnson available, losing Marshawn Lattimore last year, and him just declining in general. That's what old players do. That's what old people do. Blue, they die. That's what old people do. They die. I would love that. I would love for Will Johnson to fall 8 spots.
I like Will Johnson a lot.
Be great. Think about that with Justin Reed, Tyrann Mathieu, Kool-Aid, and that the same secondary would be effing ridiculous. From something that already was a good defense,
If he's not dealing with the injury question mark, which I've seen mixed reports of the concern about that versus people saying that it seemed like he was cleared and should be fine. Will Johnson is a guy that was talked about as a top 10 pick for a long time in this draft, the top 10 to 15, certainly. And so if you get that guy at a position of need in the second round, that's phenomenal.
If he would have come out after the Michigan championship, he probably would have been a surefire round 1. But with Michigan struggles this year, new coaching staff, all that kind of stuff, their defense just was not as good. Cornerback is one of those positions where, you can shut down someone at the side of the ball or, your side of the field, but it doesn't mean that your team it isn't going to tally as many wins and losses as maybe another position might, like an edge rusher. It doesn't affect the game as much, even though it is a great luxury to have some bomb ass corners. So, I'm super excited about this day too. We're going to come back with you on Monday, give you a full recap of everything we got going on. Do you have anything else you want to say about the draft before we get out of here?
That's about it, man. There are a lot of LSU and Louisiana guys on the board that should come off on Friday and Saturday. And so a lot of the attention goes to Thursday, obviously, but the bulk of the draft and the bulk of team building process through the draft happens on Friday and Saturday. So really looking forward to see where these guys fall.
Yeah, absolutely. So, weird that this doesn't go to Sunday anymore. It's a little weird that it's this 3-day event thing now, but whatever. We're gonna rock and roll with it. We will be back on Monday, give you a full recap of the Saints draft, where all these Louisiana and LSU players went. Please follow us, like, comment, share this video. We'd love to talk with you, interact with you. Go to LA versus all y'all on Twitter and on Instagram, and you can go to PODnas _ LA on Instagram to follow us as well. Thanks for coming out. We appreciate it. Have a good one, Jarrett. I'm getting out of here. PODnas.